Hello everybody, my name is Ratnus and welcome to this upper Karazhan plus 18 run that I did earlier this week on Sanguine Grievous Fortified. I just want to talk a little bit about how the dungeon works, decisions made here. First thing going on, you have an Infiltrator that you should definitely always pull this Infiltrator here. The Spirit you actually got to be careful of there because I think that it's that debuff that it put on the Demon Hunter that killed them. I think that actually might be like a Fervent Strike debuff. It's either that or the Demon Hunter Rip Threat or both, but yeah, either way, that debuff is extremely painful. As you can see, it's taking on me. A very good thing for the healer to dispel as well. And yeah, the Soul Leech thing, you also are going to need to make sure to kick on this Spirit as well. Either way, you only have one Spirit to deal with in this dungeon, so once you kill that off, you're all set, and you've got your first stack of the Shrouded Affix. This dungeon, I'm playing Prot Paladin, so I'm going with the Mastery stack. Mastery, a really nice stat to gain on Prot Paladin. Pretty much the only one that picks Mastery, I think. Although, still kind of open question. You know, there's a lot of good specs available. As again, we have another gamer down here as we start the Zul'gamux. This is where they moved Zul'gamux to in Upper. Is this first Forlorn or the Terror mob, the one that usually had the fear, so you don't have to worry about that anymore. And I think this one's pretty much always going to be worth killing because you can kind of save your cooldowns and send your cooldowns on this thing, and you get the stat buffs for the rest of the dungeon, right? So it's like the second pull of the dungeon, and you get the stat buff, which seems really worthwhile. So yeah, just fighting it up here. Of course, the rug does kind of make the ground effects hard to see, so you do have to watch out for that a little bit. Or not the rug, I guess, but under the stairs, depending on where it's casting. Shadow Eruption, you just gotta be careful of that. But then, yeah, you just kill it off, and you can go into the rest of the dungeon. After Zul'gamux, there's these two robots. Just skip ahead to the end of Zul'gamux here. These two robots, okay, and you can actually skip through these if you want. You can just run right down the middle and avoid pulling them. I think on Sanguine that it might actually be a good call, but you can also fight them. These mobs are not too bad. You just want to fight them right around over here. If you fight them on like this spot, this area down here to the side is going to be safe, and there's not going to be swirlies under there, and so your group can stand there and just not take damage. As the tank, you don't need to really worry about dodging these things, and you can just stand and tank them and heal yourself. But unfortunately, as you can see here, one of these golems is dying way faster than the other one, because the other one I didn't really get into a perfect spot, and that unfortunately sets us up for a little bit of a Sanguine disaster here. So something that in future runs of this dungeon, I rectified that, but that was something I did just the first time there. One of the first Sanguine keys of the week. You know how it is. Forget about the affix a little bit. After this, we have the Nullifier. Nullifier is actually a mob that gives a pretty big damage buff to. So the way it works is it targets somebody, it nullifies them, they pick up their orbs, and then they actually get a nice damage buff for a little while. So you can use that to just kill the Nullifier more quickly, or you can use it to kill mobs in the rest of the room. There you can see I picked up my buff, and now for 20 seconds I have this purple, I think it's like 100% damage done increase buff, which is pretty cool. I'm not making any use of it here, not pulling ahead or something like that, but that is something that you can do. Sanguine off of these mobs, even though you wouldn't think it, the worms actually do trigger Sanguine. They do drop Sanguine, so you do have to look out for that. These are the kind of mobs that if this dungeon were designed more modern, they probably wouldn't trigger on death affixes because they're so little, but they do in this place, so you got to watch out for them and just keep the pack moving as everything's dying. If you're pulling back here, this is kind of an annoying room actually to do Sanguine kiting in because of this big old statue in the middle, so you know, you kind of try your best, but you get a little bit of Sanguine healing, is at least my experience with it. So you do that. You can do a bigger pull or a smaller pull, but they actually are kind of dangerous mobs on Fortified Grievous, so I would say splitting the room up into two pulls is a pretty good compromise between that, or you can do it however you're feeling comfortable. So yeah, go and grab some more, just run through again, pull back, line of sight, AoE him down, easy. So then we have the Curator. Curator fight, also kind of tough. Like Grievous here, it's actually kind of nasty as well. You want to make sure that you're not like under committing. You make sure that you're actually using like medium-sized cooldowns, like 1 minute, that kind of stuff, on pull, that kind of thing, or else you're gonna, first of all, you'll get it back for the evocation anyways, but you also want to make sure that you're swapping enough to these energies and not just hitting the Curator and actually killing off these energies before they overwhelm your party. This swirly that they do, it seems to be fake. It doesn't seem like that does any damage. So You don't need to worry. It doesn't seem like you need to actually worry about stacking up too much because, yeah, they like jump and do a zap, but then that next swirly seems like it's pretty fake. It doesn't actually seem like it does any damage. But your main goal here is just make sure that like you don't have 2 energies alive at the same time for too long, and you definitely don't ever have 3 energies alive at the same time. As you get the Curator down out of mana, it starts the evocation. This is where you send the Bloodlust, you send the drums, you open up your inventory and right-click on your drums, as the case may be if you realize nobody else in your group has them. And ideally, you want to have all your cooldowns available for this. The fact I don't have wings here is kind of annoying. Would have been better if I did. But yeah, you just send as much damage as you can into Curator. Depending on the key level, you may be able to just kill it in one go, depending on whether it's tyrannical or fortified, all that stuff. It's worth noting that at the end of that phase, it blasts you for some AoE damage, and that damage actually goes up every time. So you may need to start getting more and more scared. But here, the boss is low enough that we can just commit Tunnel Boss and kill it off without too much difficulty. Because Zul'gamux has been moved, Zul'gamux is no longer the like first Pyromancer after this. You can literally just walk on right past it now. You could like distract it here, easy enough. Make sure that you would just run past. Then you can also, so this mob, this Flamebringer is also really annoying. It has like a threat drop, it has a frontal cleave, it dashes around. So what you want to do, if you can, is skip past it. But if you don't have a Shroud, then you have to use Invis Potch to do that, or some kind of really fancy tech, because it used to be CCable. In Legion, it was like Shroud, it was sappable, it was imprisonable. Now it's not. Now you have to Shroud or Invis Pot it. I think those are still worth, but if you have all your cooldowns recovering anyways and you want them all for Medivh, it's fine to just kill that guy, but you go way over count in this dungeon pretty much no matter what you do, so don't worry about it too much. This boss is obviously made trivial by having a Prot Paladin, because you have 400 interrupts, so the main priority on this boss is just interrupt every cast of Frostbite. Generally don't need to worry about piercing missiles on the tank, and the Inferno Bolts. You also, these ones you do want to kick if you have extras, but yeah, mostly just making sure that you have Frostbite interrupted is the biggest game here. And then yeah, again, letting piercing missiles through on the tank, not a big deal at all by comparison. That's totally fine. Prot Paladin also carries this fight because you can heal whoever's targeted by a Flame Wreath. If you have 5 melee like we do, you got to make sure you get a nice spread because you will die if just people are within the Flame Wreath are touching that fire when it spawns as well. So yeah, here the main goal is kick the Frostbolts still, definitely let the piercing missiles through, and definitely kick any Inferno Bolts on a player that is affected by a Flame Wreath, because otherwise they very much could die. Also throwing off some off-healing here, making sure that whoever is in the Flame Wreath is not dying too much. Once those Flame Wreaths go away, that's kind of the hardest part of the fight. The other intermission, this Guardian's Image one, is also somewhat deadly. But usually if you can survive the first like 15 seconds of this phase, you're good because you have one of them killed. The way it works is that they all kind of pulse for damage and they amp up the damage of that pulse when they pulse. So once you get 3 of them down to 2, that saves you a lot of damage. And once you get it down to 1, even though we have 11 stacks of this vulnerability, it's only pulsing once instead of 3 times every time it pulses. And so it's much less deadly. So you finish that off, and then you can just finish the boss off. The last one, the last ult that it can do is the Ceaseless Winter, which is also pretty free. You just jump or run a little bit, do a little bit of sidestepping to make sure you don't take too much damage from that. So yeah, that's Shrouded Medivh. After Shrouded Medivh, we hop on down this 400-year drop. Of all the RP and dungeons, actually, that they make you do, this is the least bad, I think, because it is just so cool. But it's still a really long RP. What I like to do when we get down here is there's a Shrouded Rat, you can see right there. I like running kind of straight to that Shrouded Rat, grabbing it, and then going over to these books over here, because there's not too many of the other mobs patrol over by where these books are. So we grab this Infiltrator, and then we just head over to the books, and that's a nice place to be that's kind of safe from too much danger. You can see we've got another rat pulled by our Demon Hunter over here while they were trying to grab the Infiltrator. Not the end of the world, though. We got Bop, we got Life Cocoon, we're able to get everything sorted back up. These rats actually put a nasty disease or poison on the target, so dispelling that if you have a poison dispel is a good idea. And then the Stampede, you also want to dodge from the rats there. So quite a lot going on. Ideally, you don't pull a rat. Ideally, that thing doesn't get pulled. The 2 infiltrators you can also skip if you want, but it's nice to get the stats for these boss fights, because the boss fights are usually how you die in this dungeon, or trying to do some kind of skip and having the skip go wrong. Those are the main ways. It's usually not like timer. So spending a little bit of time, going a little bit extra over count to get some more Shrouded buffs, I actually think is a pretty good exchange in this dungeon in particular. But yeah, so now we get to the Mana Devourer, which is the only boss in the game that gives count, I believe. As a fun fact, it gives the count of a Mana Devourer, 3 count. And yeah, this boss, couple different ways you can attack this one. I like to pull it over into the corner, over in this side here. That's kind of the standard place to tank this. That makes it possible to soak a lot of orbs all at once into the middle of the boss's hitbox. If it's in the corner like this, most of the orbs that it spawns during Coalesce Energy will come right underneath it, and you can just stand right there and pick them all up yourself. You can immune this, or if you're in a low key or something like that, if you're playing a tank with a lot of self-sustain, you don't have to, and you can just take the damage buffs, especially playing like Blood DK. You can just get like 400 of them. So yeah, here's what that looks like. You just get a bunch of this unstable mana, standing right under the boss. Open up the dungeon journal, just check to see what's going on in the dungeon journal. Got 6 stacks of that now, and just trying to heal up with Word of Glory ever so often to make sure I don't die. I can hit bubble to drop my stacks as well, as I, again, for some reason, was looking at something in the dungeon journal during this part of the fight. Probably somebody in chat asking something like that. As yeah, you can see the healing that you can do on Prot Paladin, on DK, I think on most tank specs, depending on the key level, should be enough to get you through here. And then for the second set, I end up committing the bubble, use the taunt. My taunt expires, the Demon Hunter gets meleeed, so I cancel my bubble so that he doesn't get meleeed again, and then I can keep on tanking the boss. Yeah, the way it works with bubble is if you don't have the last stand talented, you can bubble, the next threat target will start getting autoed, but your taunt overrides that. If you taunt something, it has to only attack you. So for 3 seconds of the 8 seconds of your bubble, you can just make the mob attack into you while you're immune, even if you don't have like bubble taunt talented. And then I think it's always a good idea to have a macro to cancel immunities on yourself, especially if you're playing a tank that has an immunity, so that you can then drop that immune, drop a bop that somebody puts on you when you need to actually be getting autoed again. So that's what I did there. Now here we're actually very good on count. Count is, again, extremely free in this dungeon. Even with just half the mana worms, you get more than enough count. These things are actually fairly dangerous, though, right on pull, especially if you're going in without cooldowns. If I just had Divine Toll or something there, I would have much better threat and survivability on pull, but I end up having my Cheat Death Trinket proc instead because I went into this pull with absolutely nothing, didn't have Ardent, Guardian, Wings, Divine Toll, anything like that. So it took a lot of damage. And then we're just kiting these Devourers down the hall. This makes it pretty easy for the DPS to collect those damage-increasing orbs that are trailing behind the pack. And also it's good for Sanguine to move the mobs in this way. And you can see the count we're getting from this. These, again, you just get so much count in this dungeon. You get all that you could possibly need. And we're going to be basically full on count. And the chess event gives count as well. So this next area, I recommend a skip if you can. The problem with the skip here is that Shroud does not really work for it. It can, but it often will pull this Slayer, either the Slayer or the Shrouded mob next to it. So I like to instead send the Invis Pots as well. Brawn gets us into a little bit of trouble here, gets in combat. But if you just let Brawn despawn, you won't actually be in combat, even though Brawn got in combat or whatever. So I just don't have to worry too much about it. End up having Brawn despawn, and yeah, you can see our rogue ended up dying, but nobody else did, so we're able to land the mass res. Landing the mass res up here is actually a bit of a pain because of the fire swirlies. So what you want to do is you want to have other people stand off of you to bait the fire swirlies off of whoever's doing the mass res, and then hopefully you'll be able to find enough time to actually land a mass res. So we go into the chess encounter. Chess encounter, you want to usually target a knight if you can. Ideally, you're cleaving onto other pieces as well, as my Word of Glory lands right after the damage instead of right before. Or lands right before the damage instead of right after there. You can tank the king, or you can just have nobody in melee range of him. You don't want to stand in this Royal Slash, though. Even if you're a tank, that'll do a lot of damage. You can tank it on low-key levels with defensives or whatever, but there's just no reason to. And yeah, if you're a melee DPS, don't be in melee range of the king unless the tank is as well. So we get the king pushed, and now we get to just damage him freely for a little while. Luckily, the knight is also here, so we're able to cleave it down at the same time. And that's good because we're not going to be able to push the king on this fortified key below 30% before the end of this stun. The way it works is that the king gains the damage immunity back and starts attacking again, unless he's below 30% health, in which case he'll start attacking again, but he won't gain the damage immunity back. So you don't have to worry about the damage immunity coming back. You can tunnel the king if you can get him below 30% during one of these burn phases. So yeah, we target the knight again, get the knight finished off, and we're just trying to get this king now below 30%, but we do have one less player this time, so hopefully we have the damage to do just that, and not have to kill another piece. As you can see, where's the stun? It's a 20-second stun, I think. I don't know if I can see it on the meters anywhere. 30 point, yeah, so now it's below 30%, and so you can see comes out of the thing and it's going to start attacking, but it doesn't have the 90% damage reduction, so you're able to just finish off the king, keep tunneling, and checkmate, as they say in chess. King goes down, and now we get to the last boss after a nice little bit of RP. Last boss, there's quite a little bit of nuance to this boss, a few different cool things you can do. We don't do all of them in this. I'll try and point out the ones we do and also mention some of the other ones that are an option. The first tech on this fight that I think is really big is Spell Reflect if you have a warrior. The way you can do this reliably is after any Disintegrate cast, the boss will always immediately cast the fire, and it will also not auto first. So you can see our warrior is actually taunted here, and now the boss will send a Burning Blast. It looks like he's parry taunted, so maybe it sometimes does auto as well. But parry taunts, lands that reflect, and actually does a huge amount of damage with this spell reflected dot back onto Viz'adoum there. And you can see, yeah, that boss is now just pushed 50% as we head up. I don't know if I mouse over the details here to see just how much is coming from the spell reflect. But yeah, now we make it to the phase 2. Now in phase 2, you can avoid, if you have range in your group, you don't have to actually do this. If just nobody walks into the circle, you can stand back and just keep ranging it, and it will just keep disintegrating down at you, and you just keep dodging, and you don't have to deal with any of the other mechanics. This is a fortified key, and we have the Spell Reflect hack, so the boss is already basically pushed. We're not going to have to deal with mechanics in this phase, but the reason you would do that is because the Chaotic Shadows dots that it's going to put out, that we actually skipped here, are not fun. Like they do a lot of damage, sometimes too much damage to handle, so instead you can just cheese the fight if you want to do that, and you have range DPS and just all stand back there. Then you'll have cooldowns for this platform. This platform you can also avoid fighting the actual boss in. What you want to do is you want to maintain a spread during this run, because these bats above us do a 3-yard AoE on people, so that is something you want to watch out for. And then do not Avenger Shield the boss if you're playing Paladin, because that will interrupt Stabilized Rift. And what you want to do is not interrupt Stabilized Rift. You want to just DPS the boss here and let that Stabilized Rift cast channel for the whole time here, because the boss does nothing else while it's Stabilizing Rift. You can just kill it and not have to deal with any of the mechanics and just interrupt it last second, or just kill the boss before it even finishes that. Get your dungeon done. And that's the end of the video. Hope you found it somewhat interesting. Hope something in here was helpful for you. If it did, remember to hit subscribe and ring that wacky bell. Leave a comment down below. All that stuff does help me out tremendously, so I appreciate it if you choose to do so. Either way, thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.